Hello, everyone. Welcome to the month of April. Monero Meet. It's great to have everyone here. It looks like it's just me, but I promise there are other people here on the call too. We have, myself, Justin. You have Need Money 90. Want to say hi, Need Money 90?
Hello. I missed the last one, but I'm here now. So
Always
hello.
great to have you. Just makes it more exciting that you're on. Tallest Man is here too.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, like Need Money, I also missed the last one, so really good to be back and hanging out with y'all for a bit.
Excellent. We have Scott.
Hello.
Yes, Scott's always here. It's always the two of us just making our way through if no one else will be on. And then we have Rotten Wheel. Want to say hi, Rotten Wheel?
Hello.
So, hey, everybody. Hopefully everything works well. You're saying it's too quiet. I'm going to check on that real quick. Otherwise, we're here to, just have a casual conversation about what's going on with Monero. Always a lot of fun things going on. And just answer questions. I'm going to be watching the chat. You should see I finally decided to put up some lights, so it shouldn't be that one side of my face is super bright anymore. Not that anyone really cares about that anyway. I guess open to the room here. Are there any Monero topics that people want to talk about to begin with?
I mean, I'd put my hand up just to start a conversation about atomic swaps. I mean, I know there's a lot of chatter about that on Reddit, and one interesting comment that I saw recently on there, which I hadn't actually considered before, was that some of this software is probably going to
direct more towards the audience, I suppose.
Sorry, Scott, you're going through there.
Whoops.
Continue, tell us, man.
Yeah, no worries.
I was asking if that was directed at us or if we were waiting for the viewers to ask.
Oh, can you not hear? Can you not hear, tallest man?
I'm hearing everyone, but maybe Scott is not hearing everyone.
Yeah, that's so. Scott, tallest man just spoke there. If you didn't hear him, can you try to reload, please? But continue, tallest man.
Yeah, no worries. So all I was going to point out was that people will probably be developing these swap clients with some sort of integration with a chain analysis built into it, which is pretty cool. It'll detect your tainted BTC, which probably most of the atomic swap BTC is going to be tainted, in my opinion. But I mean, what does everybody think about that? Can they just engage CipherTrace or whoever to and pay for that service? Or are they going to have to be kind of sneaky about integrating that chain analysis, or they do it full open source? I'd be curious to hear your guys' input. If anyone could hear me.
I don't know how you could do it as full open source because, to some extent, sure, the tracing tool does matter. Like you need to build out a tool that is capable of, figuring out what to do with the data you give it. But at the end of the day, the attribution is what you're really paying for, right? To say this address is related to this entity. You can't just look at the cryptocurrency blockchain, like with Bitcoin, let's say, and just intrinsically know that it is a Bitcoin address unless they make it a vanity address. So you're paying for the attribution. And so it's not just whether something's open source or not, you also need the data set to be available. And obviously you can't just call CipherTrace and be like, hello, I would like a full copy of your whole database for my own use, please. Thank you.
Exactly.
They're gonna want to have some controls over that. So
what do you think happens? Do they set up I know the whole client, it needs to be pretty ideally it's not backed by a corporation and it's just kind of created and then set free, but maybe by some anonymous maintainers. But how do they go about integrating that? Checking or the engaging a CipherTrace or whoever.
I mean, they just ask, hey, are you willing to sell us this product? There are a few competitors out there, so I would say it'd probably be more difficult for someone to get someone who's working with a large company that has government contracts to perhaps bite. But if someone's a little bit more desperate to get their name out there, or they buy it through a reseller or something, there's definitely different ways to try and get it. But I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be the preference of whoever's buying the BTC, what comfort level they feel like getting the Bitcoin. If you live in a country that doesn't like really regulate this stuff, you may just not care. If you live in a country where people do look at these sorts of things and expect you to follow, coin checking and the like, then yeah, it's going to be far more likely that you would need to care. So I think it depends on those sorts of things. And it would not surprise me to be on a high level, it would not surprise me that someone would be doing some form of chain analysis on the Bitcoin deposited for the atomic swaps. And I want to take the opportunity to welcome Dr. Daniel Kim. Thanks for joining on Monero Meet.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for letting me know about this. And
Yeah,
hey, everybody. Are we live now? Or
we are live. We also have Doug, we have Rotten Wheel, and we have Scott on
Hello.
too. And
Hey, guys.
2 people with the camera now.
yes, luckily, so the problem with OBS Ninja, even though it's nice, the quality is really good. It makes sure that your camera is really coming through, Dr. Daniel Kim. The problem, though, is if it's just me with my camera on and everyone else's audio, it just shows full screen without any other UI, just a picture of me, which is perhaps a little bit more intimidating for a group chat session that someone's trying to follow. So,
Hey,
yeah,
Dr. Kim, tallest man here as well.
hey, how's it going?
It's going.
we have some comments on YouTube saying, thank you for joining, Mr. Kim. We were talking about atomic swaps. Tallest man rose the question where if people are offering atomic swap services and are buying the Bitcoin, do you think that they're going to use chain analysis services before they receive this Bitcoin? And my broad answer is yes, I think people will. But was curious if you had thoughts on that too.
Yeah, there's a monetary aspect to that too, because all these people spending time poring over the transparent blockchains, trying to figure out who's doing what, you have to pay those people. And so there's going to be like an effort on the part of these companies to be recovering some of that cost. So, I mean, I think there tends to be a bit of a tendency to portray chain analysis as being sort of monolithic, like a binary thing, like it's either on or off. But I think increasingly you're going to see shades of quote unquote quality in terms of different chain analysis companies providing different, different levels of quality of their social credit score that they're coming up with. So I think you'll see it's just yet another complexity when you have a transparent chain, is that not only do you have this task of trying to assign a probability of badness to every transparent address that's out there, you also have to make an assessment of how dependable is the particular chain analysis company's credit score that you're relying on to make that assessment. Like, how good are they? So it gets even more meta. And of course, all of them have their own, service contracts that they're going to make you sign up with to even get the benefit of their particular social credit score.
We should make our own chain analysis company, I think. I think we'd honestly be pretty good at it.
And social credit scoring system.
Oh, yeah. I want my name, Justin Ehrenhofer, the founder of the premier social credit score system. I think that'd be so great. So great.
Yeah, but then we have to deal with those Monero people, and they're just a thorn in the side of the chain analysis.
Yeah,
we'd have to deal with tracking the Monero blockchain, and how could we do that?
Well, is there any... do we even need to be reliable, or can we just sell our best guess and just flag everything as higher risk and just charge people $1 million to do that?
I say we do that, and then if you want a high score, you can just pay for that also.
What about this? What if you specifically partner with us and you tell us what Monero transactions you send, we can say this person's probably trusted lower score.
Easy.
Sounds like you could triple dip through quite a wide variety of means here. It sounds like a good business. How do we invest?
ICO?
I mean, your results screen would end up, I think, looking like the Monero rich list, right? It's the same sort of principle. So it's like whatever address you type in, you're going to see basically the same result. And then, Justin would be, I guess, paying advanced service contracts for that.
Yeah, and you can pay me a little bit extra, indirectly, of course, to have your addresses be lower or your
Wait, I got
transactions
it.
be lower risk.
Let's get an IRS contract to trace Monero, because we know already that you don't actually have to be able to trace Monero for one of those contracts to pay out.
Hey, it was what, 600 whatever grand for a proof of concept. We could probably do
Proof
that.
of concept. There was a proof of concept?
Well, that's what I had offered when that came out, was like, hey, just give me 500 grand and then I'll get myself to the IRS office for a week and I'll just train everybody. I'll give a few presentations and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, we will see what happens when it's less deterministic. I think the main reason. So I want to preface this very carefully. To some very teeny tiny extent, some Bitcoin proponents are correct that if everybody did trade as if Bitcoin was a global exchange and there were peer-to-peer exchanges and purchases that were extremely common and whatever, maybe it would be difficult to track all that information, or it would maybe be a very unreliable metric of risk. But the reality is half of Bitcoin transactions are directly between exchanges. So like it narrows your scope pretty considerably, and it makes these tools possible. Now, they argue that we just need to tell people they need to change the behavior of how they use the money, but we kind of know that it's foolish to tell people just do it differently. We can yell that as much as we want, but we need to improve the protocol anyway to make it so that people can send funds between exchanges and it's still not mass surveilled. So,
well, also you have the issue of if or when someone ever gets something on Monero, they're not going to publicly announce it for as long as possible. So we always have to consider that too. Same with like the quantum computing. There's not just going to be an announcement that, hey, this one entity or government has a whatever functioning qubit quantum computer. It's just, you're not going to know about it for 20 years.
No, they must tell you. It's a law. Welcome, VT Nerd Lee. Great to have you here.
Yeah, a little late, but still present.
How has adapting to the GitHub challenges, shall we say, been? To a lot of people who are out of the loop, there's some outside participant that's spamming a bunch of stuff on Reddit, Twitter. I don't know how much Twitter, actually. GitHub, all over the place, and it's been quite annoying.
It's a work challenge that I would have never anticipated when I was in college. Like, you're just gonna get spammed to death while trying to do work. Yeah, it's sort of weird because so what Justin's referring to is I'm sorry because I don't know you discuss this, but because they're spamming the GitHub repo, they're actually spamming the issues and PR requests. So, like most people, I use my email to sort of track what's going on. And when a lot of your emails are just spam intermixed with real issues people are having, it gets kind of annoying to track what's going on. I mean, basically, you just sort of adapt in that before I would use email primarily. Now I use email as, oh, I recognize this one contributor. Now I need to go into the actual GitHub issue, because going line by each email, you end up with so much spam. It's just quicker to go to the GitHub link. So it's pretty much just, oh, I recognize Monero Moo. I think I should read what's going on there now. Whereas all these other names, and it's kind of sad because there's probably one or two things you'll miss. But the trouble is mainly on, I think, the core team, because they've had to either constantly delete GitHub issues, delete the comments, just because, I mean, most of them they're not even worth keeping up, really. So then at some point they locked the repo to only past contributors, which caused some other issues, as you can imagine. But there didn't seem to be a way around it. They were just, and it seemed to be not automated. It may have been someone, an actual human, was doing this too, which made it really hard for the spam filters. There was some discussion by that. I don't know if that's true or not, but that made it extra hard for the. Well, you can imagine why it was extra hard. Because
Some of
the
it
spam
barely looked like spam. It looked like positive Monero comments, and then there was some spam mixed in. Really weird.
Right. And then what got super annoying is they would link to other issues. So what they would do is they would say, like some spam issue, and then they would say also, and then reference another PR request or reference another issue. And so that made it look legitimate because, who references a real recent other issue. But then the other issue then got spammed. So it was actually double spamming in a way. Like, in other words, GitHub will say, if you reference an issue in another issue, it'll actually say, oh, it was referenced over here. So that you now got all these GitHub issues and PR requests that have all these like, oh yeah, this someone over here talked about it. Someone over here talked about it. And so what'll happen is you've now got almost every issue in GitHub, almost every issue in PR has completely unrelated references. Like if you're talking about the wallet, they'll have all these references to, something about the daemon or something just completely unrelated. So it's really confusing to track, because that's meant for like tracking related issues. Like if you're looking something issue at a PDP layer, you can reference it and know, oh, this is related. Maybe it's the same issue. But now you've got like all of these issues that are completely unrelated to the other, like P2P issues, wallet issues. I mean, luckily they can't cross-reference between the GUI and the other teams, but it's bad enough because just that main repo has, like RPC, wallet, P2P code, blockchains. Like they're all just everything's referencing each other because they're all just spamming each other at the same time. It's really, yeah. The only way to describe it is you have to like go in there and just look at any recent PR request, and you'll immediately see see what I'm talking about. Because otherwise, it's as confusing as it sounds.
Yeah, I know from the cryptocurrency subreddit, we've had people write scripts and they're banning like 30 accounts an hour or something now. It's pretty intensive.
The
So,
problem that we have is that we want to allow new contributors because occasionally Monero has had this a lot in the past where it's like some math professor, some good programmer, or whatever, but they want to remain, for whatever reason, they want to remain anonymous. They'll create a new GitHub account. They may not even have like an email associated with their own name, and then they'll just post an issue and then comment on an issue, and just pretty much that's all they use the account for. So yes, we've restricted it to only people who have contributed in the past, but then now that it limits sort of new people coming in, it limits sort of these very real people who do exist, who are like apparently math professors that are ashamed to know that they're interested in cryptocurrencies but want to help Monero. They're kind of locked out, but only the main repo. What's interesting is that they're not attacking. My understanding is they're not attacking the GUI or some of these other ones in quite the same level, so they haven't had to restrict it. Core does the core team hasn't restricted it as much. Primarily did it because like Moo and one other person who are the only people who can really delete issues and delete comments have to, because it's like they're somehow defeating the automated spam filtering. Like Monero Moo was spending a lot of time just going through and saying delete, 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 and eventually, as you can understand, was just um like this is just wasting my time. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess we know who theoretically is doing it, but it's impressive how much time they're willing to commit to this.
any comments from others on the spam stuff?
I mean, my guess is that they probably, it's either like, yeah, one kind of somewhat knowledgeable person doing it literally themselves to some degree, as opposed to a script, or they've just hired someone for super cheap out of whatever country where you can have cheap labor and smart kind of programmatically minded people, or at least computer literate people. I'm thinking like a place like India or something, or the Philippines, and they're just paying a microscopic amount of money, and then someone's manually doing this stuff, and they could probably ramp it up a whole lot too, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's pretty much what. That's not necessarily my opinion, but that's what someone else had posited, and it makes the most sense actually.
Okay.
That doesn't exactly make the most sense to me because the spam is fairly uniform in its motivation and wording across most of the platforms I've seen it on. If it was being outsourced to an individual, I'm not sure it would be so consistent.
Mm. Yeah, it has to be like a knowledgeable human, I think is what you're saying, as opposed to just they have to have some savvy of what Monero is to do these attacks. I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I would not expect at this moment that it's being outsourced. Actually,
Which is that's even crazier when you think about it, though. If you're go
just
ahead.
wasting their time because they have a vendetta.
Yeah, I want the tallest man to back or
Yeah, all I was going to say is that if I was running this attack myself, I would be the person who's familiar with Monero, and I would spreadsheet everything and then hire my guy or my team, and I would give them the spreadsheet. Hey, these are kind of the basic attacks you're going to run. This is what you're going to say. And you just have different columns in a matrix. Like, here's your GitHub stuff. Here's what you're going to put on Reddit or whatever. And that way you could have kind of the mind behind it, launching the right kind of attacks, but then you've got someone else actually doing the grinder work of creating accounts and spreading the message. And that accounts for the uniformity, or it could potentially account for the uniformity as well that Need Money had mentioned.
yeah, I was gonna say it is pretty impressive because they did it across IRC, GitHub, Reddit, and even some Twitter. I mean, if you go on some Twitter feed, there's just people just getting blasted too. So I mean, it's a multi-faceted approach, just spamming just everybody in Monero.
I wonder when they will stop. Hopefully soon. We'll see. But I'm glad we actually are in a pretty solid position to defend against a lot of this stuff. So
Speaking of attacks, you guys, what I've never been one to subscribe to the theory of price suppression, or, oh, look, the whales are doing their thing today, or they're driving the price up or down. But lately, especially from some of the stuff put on Reddit and the charts that you can see, there's like these 1500 XMR market sells. I forget what day it was. It was a few days ago where we went from, like, let's say 150 to 167 or something, and then had to close the day back at 152. And it was just so obvious that someone was doing these market sells, and that's fine. They're allowed to do that. But I'm just curious on everyone's thoughts. Is this just some early whale taking advantage of price strength to cash out and do something different? Or do you all think that this is a more orchestrated effort by some party for whatever reason?
I'm not really into the conspiracy stuff. I yeah, I mean, I suspect there are people who want Monero's price to go down. I don't.
It can only go up.
Oh, yeah, right. Price only go up. What was I thinking?
sorry, Monero doesn't have S&P 500 privileges, sadly.
Is Dr. Kim, is he listening? Does he have any thoughts on this? Because he would be another good person to.
Yeah, I think I would say um, quite a while ago, I came to the conclusion that trying to make sense of any short-term market dynamics in crypto was sort of a sure way to slowly lose your sanity. And it's certainly true in like something like the equity markets, but I would say it's even more so in crypto because it's like they're unknown unknowns, and so it's you know we're rational creatures, and so we seek kind of sensical explanations of short-term price movements. But I think the reality is it's not really possible for any one person to really know. It could be that these theories are true. Maybe. I don't know. I can't say they're not. But at the same time, it's hard to either prove or disprove. And so, I tend to try to discount the temptation to really devote a lot of mental energy on that and zoom out, which I think generally people don't do enough in crypto to really like zoom out to the multi-year level and look at the broader societal dynamics of what actually got introduced to the world with Nakamoto consensus. And to you take that sort of a broader view, I think helps one to be able to not worry quite so much about the short-term dynamics like this. So I guess that's my non-answer answer.
If I can further add a non-answer to that non-answer, I would also not answer that. When you come up with these types of conspiracies, like, even if in theory they could be true, there's just no way to really assess whether, like, either way, whether it is or isn't. So it's, and also, I don't, like, it's is it worth even trying to guess, besides just a fun, like, cocktail thing to laugh about? I don't know what the point of doing it is. And also, what are you going to do even if it was true? What are you going to do? Right? Someone,
Well,
like,
that's it. Is I don't think there's anything you can or should do. Like I propose, if it is someone, an early adopter cashing out, like, great, good for them. But that's what, like, I never took it that seriously either, or agonized over daily price movements. But I don't know. To me, when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, that's a plausible explanation. Someone owns like 1 million XMR, and they're just chipping away any little price strength they get. But yeah, I don't know. It was just interesting. I wanted to share that. Thought about it a little bit the past few days.
Yeah, I think actually the traditional markets kind of set this bad precedent, because if you tune into like CNBC or all these other like financial channels that normies watch, they're always providing this or that explanation for some stock movement, but it's always in retrospect. It's like they see that that some stock has gone up or down, and then they look at the news that happened that day, and then they'll pick and choose whatever supports that narrative for that will support their conclusion that well, of course, it had to have gone up or down. And in reality, they don't really know that. So yeah, I guess the other thing is that I suppose it is a bit interesting, like, to look at the way in which some of these trades are happening, because a market sell is different than a series of small sells that are laddered as limit orders. So I would think that if you're if you try to put yourselves in the minds of a whale who's trying to kind of slowly liquidate their large position, I mean, if you're disposing of a small part of your position, you probably don't want to demoralize the rest of the market, which means you would want to sell in such a way that's not going to be seen as kind of demoralizing, which I would say large market buys tend to be, because you see a big red candle when that happens. So I don't know, but I suppose at a certain level of wellness, you might not even care. I don't know. See, again, it gets very circular, it gets very speculative, and I'm no more privy to this stuff than anybody else. But I think the best long-term solution is, again, to try to tune it out and zoom out and look at fundamentals and be patient.
Yeah, the
Embrace
market
the
sell
pain.
is just
helped anybody in crypto, though.
Hmm?
Since when has patience helped anybody in crypto, though?
When moon.
That's true. When moon. Oh, hey. Sorry. Hey, Steph.
Hello.
We can see you.
Yes.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yes, we can
There you
hear you.
go.
Welcome.
Get my audio output working.
oh, it's working.
We were just finishing up some price conspiracy talks, which are always fun to chat about. I guess, quickly switching the topic here, did anybody see the recent Coin Bureau video about Monero that they put out on the 28th? So just a few days ago.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'll link that in
Was
chat
there.
for people. I'll link that in chat for people. I'll have someone else explain, what it covered, or if it was, give their opinion about what it was good, whether it was good or bad, or what they thought of it. But it has over 130,000 views at this point in less than a week. So it clearly is one of our most viewed Monero videos. So anyone want to jump in and chat about that?
I think he's seen some of my talks.
I hope so.
So I'll just say something quick and maybe turn over the larger explanation if someone else wanted to go over that. But what I will say is that on my list for this week is I had been planning to write, or first of all, get in touch with Coin Bureau and then point out some of the, A, thank them very much, and B, correct some of the, what I think were maybe just oversights or incompleteness in the regulatory section of the video. But when I realized this and I found out how to get in touch with them, nobody wants a homework assignment of like, hey, tallest man, get back to me. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a phone call. Nobody wants that. So what I'm going to do is actually basically rewrite that section for Coin Bureau and then send it to them when it's ready. And then they can choose to do whatever they want with that in their next update. And also I'm not going to ask them to do an update, but just, hey, here's some more material for whenever that may be that you want to do another Monero video. And hopefully that is more sooner than later. But if somebody else would like to maybe go over the video, they had any thoughts on that, I just wanted to point that out, that I'm going to be approaching them soon with some more complete regulatory information they can include on their next update.
Yeah, we all know the SEC will ban Monero.
Yeah, I mean, I think really briefly, I thought it was surprisingly good. I mean, I shared it on Twitter. I didn't expect much, and I don't expect much from general YouTube output, especially when it comes to Monero, since we're kind of the forgotten stepchild or whatever we are. It was a very detailed, very honest look at Monero, the issues with Bitcoin, what Monero does better. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was much more detailed and much more well thought out and well put together than I'd expected. And I've heard from other people before and since that Coin Bureau is a really good YouTuber and one of the few that is like honest and talks about shortcomings and that kind of thing. So I had heard good things, but I'd kind of given up on cryptocurrency YouTube a long time ago. So it was encouraging and refreshing to see something that is honestly, it's one of the better intro videos to Monero at this point, and it's something I'll definitely be sharing because I think it's a good, again, not perfect, but a really good shorter overview of why Monero matters, what the differences are between Bitcoin and Monero. And yeah, just a lot of really good content. I was very thankful that he did that.
Yeah, I think his latest video was a step forward too in getting away from this stale old narrative that Monero is what people do when they were trying to get away with something. And that was kind of refreshingly absent from this latest talk of his. I think that the narrative that it's the squeaky clean people who need Monero the most is something that is still just an idea out of left field for most people in crypto. And so anything that can help get that message out is great. Yeah, it's there certainly seems to be an inverse relationship between like views and subscriber counts and actual quality on YouTube.
I made the mistake of clicking on one of them that someone said mentioned Monero, and now I get push notifications from YouTube about like, will Cardano be worth $100 next week? It's just utter garbage. But I'm glad that we have a new resource to push around. I know, obviously, Dr. Daniel Kim, you were one of perhaps the first that was really pushing, like the squeaky clean people are the ones that need to protect their reputation the most, right? If you're doing nothing wrong, you don't want to be accused of doing something wrong. And for that, why would you want to be caught up in something you're not at fault for? I mean, I think it's a good argument, and it's great to hear people that we wouldn't typically describe as from the Monero community, but still are interested in Monero, that are repeating similar talking points. I think it's great.
And there was obviously a lot of time and research put into that video because a lot of that stuff is not what most people who have just been like, oh, what's Monero? Oh, okay, would talk about. So there's a lot more detail than I expected. I think it shows that him or someone within Coin Bureau either spent a lot of time researching or are keeping up to date with Monero and staying involved in one way or another. So yeah, really good to see.
They even talked about things like Triptych upcoming. Like they didn't. This is how you judge a Monero video. Do they mention Kovri still in 2021? and do they point to something that actually is a future improvement? So I think they pass on both flying colors there. If you're watching this
when-
right now, if you're one of the people watching this YouTube stream, please make some Monero content. We need some content that isn't just cringe. How about like a lot of the cryptocurrency content is? And if you do want to help, I've been meaning to do like a very simple, like 10 things you should, or 5 things you should know about Monero and 5 things you don't know about Monero. And then someone also cheekily advised 5 things you can't know about Monero. I'm like, you know what, that's actually a pretty good idea. We could make a video about things you can't know with Monero. So if you want to help with things like scripts, let us know. You know, join our matrix chats or whatever. We always are looking for help there. Because people clearly watch this more than they watch the Monero Meets. So any other news that people wanted to talk about before we start going like in depth on future updates or anything else people have questions on? Nothing at all? What about probably want to spend hours on this, but what about like Michael Mosier being the new head of FinCEN?
Well, yeah, Justin, can you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, I know what has happened, but maybe I don't fully understand the significance of that myself, for better or worse. I think it's a good thing, but there were certainly some folks that shared the opposite opinion, that or maybe they weren't sure if it was a good thing or not. I mean, you might be in the best place to kind of provide a broad, educated context on that move.
Sure, I guess. Yeah. So I can't speak for him, obviously, but he's been like I've had a few conversations with him, mostly from the comply first side, saying like, hey, this is how we generally view things. We think exchanges aren't taking seriously risks with bearer assets. We think that they're just dismissing this, and you're losing access to all this information. You know, instead of a U.S. user trading Monero on a U.S. exchange where you get SARS, they're trading in the Seychelles, right? So you're not getting anything. And so we approached him and FinCEN and had these conversations. At the time, he was the deputy director of innovation at FinCEN, I believe was his official title. But now he's in charge of FinCEN generally. And so it's like, I think it's exciting news. I really do. I know that some people look at them and say, oh my gosh, he previously worked for Chainalysis. Well, he was like OFAC and FinCEN, then to Chainalysis, then back to FinCEN. Like, so his background is with, you know, regulators. And I think I'm optimistic that we'll have more honest conversations going forward about, you know, it's about getting Monero on exchanges, because it's clearly allowed, but people just don't want to bother. And I think my hope and what I'm going to be pushing for is to encourage FinCEN to actually say things to the effect of, we actually want exchanges in the US to list Monero so that we get oversight over some of these transactions, compared to them being, you know, transacted elsewhere where they get very little AML standards or oversight. So we will see. That'll might be a few years before any of that materializes. It's, you know, it's its own internal political battles and stuff within the US government. But I think it is good news personally. Obviously, I can't speak for him or promise anything, but in my opinion, Michael has been very, very understanding of some of the arguments we've made in the past. And I think that among people in the cryptocurrency space, I think he respects Comply First's arguments and being like a sort of sensible point where we want to get FinCEN information, and likewise, we want to help Monero being adopted. So yeah, in my opinion, if he thought we were stupid, we probably wouldn't be hearing back from him. You know what I mean? So I'm excited. But
Is that appointment a done deal, or do you know if that position is subject to Senate confirmation?
so they announced. They announced in a press release he was the interim. So he's the interim deputy director. Sorry. So it says specifically here, After Kenneth Blanco stepped down, he resigned. Yeah, Michael Mosier is the new deputy director of FinCEN. He was previously the digital innovation officer was his previous title. I'm not sure if there's any additional Senate confirmation or anything that's needed, but I'll post the FinCEN press release here in the YouTube chat, and I guess I will also post it here in OBS Ninja. Oh, no, this is an old one. This is the previous one. Oops. That's the wrong one. Sorry. Here's the new one. This person just keeps getting promoted. Here's the new one. Sorry, his new title is acting director. He previously was deputy director, which I guess that makes sense. It would not make sense for him to be the head of FinCEN if he was the deputy director. Anyway, any quick questions on that? I don't want to spend the whole time on that because I know it's just speculation, but just in case people have questions on that. A lot of people saying that when they click donate on F-Droid apps, there are much more of them accepting Monero for donations. I think that's definitely true. Seth, you might have a better pulse. Seth and Scott probably have a better pulse on, I think, the broad FOSS communities, but I wish Andreas was on too, because he has a pulse on some of these too, especially in the video editing world. One tool I use, Lossless Cut, which just allows you to, like, as the name implies, I guess, cut videos at various points without wasting quality by having to re-encode, which is a waste of everybody's time and makes everything worse. They started accepting Monero donations, so I sent a donation their way because I use their tool, at least on a monthly basis, sometimes like a daily or weekly basis. So yeah, it's cool to see more and more people like being like, yeah, it's cool, I'm going to add this. I see it's a real reason. They have a real community, and I hope that the Monero community is out there ready to support these people.
Yeah, I've been sharing a lot about that on Twitter and on Reddit. I've tried to share on both when I find that, but it seems like there's a real surge in Monero donation acceptance. I think twofold is, I think Monero's really claimed its spot as private digital cash. So a lot of projects that are just pro-privacy in general, if they want to accept donations and they don't want to rely on like a Patreon or some kind of third-party payment processor, have realized I can just throw a Monero subaddress in a GitHub README and call it a day. And I think the power of just being able to use a static address and not having to worry about almost any of the attacks you would have to worry about with Bitcoin and stuff like that has shown itself in how people are accepting it in a simple way like that. You don't need BTC Pay server. You don't need anything fancy. You honestly could just run Monero or Cake Wallet and copy and paste a subaddress, and you have a good self-sovereign donations platform. But yeah, I've seen a big rise in that. I mean, I just put out the other day, I built kind of like a stack of self-hosted tools and just bundled them into Docker Compose and hopefully made it a little easier for people to run those tools. And every single one of the tools that I included in that, and I didn't choose them because of this, but every single one of the tools included in that, except for Nextcloud, except Monero for donations. And the majority of them specify they either only accept Monero or they accept Monero and they specify it as the primary donation method that they desire.
That's interesting.
That's
I
very
think
cool.
it's been really cool to see. And I mean, we've had projects like Hunix and Tor that have had Monero support for a while that are a little bigger and more steady. But then we also have ones like Techlore is a recent project and community that I've gotten involved in and really
you're trying
enjoyed.
to get colleagues to accept Monero as well, right?
Yep. They are working on adding it right now. I've been talking to Nick for a while about that. They use a third-party payment processor, and they're working with them. They accept Monero. The third-party payment processor does, so they're just working with them.
Sorry for putting your shilling on the spot.
No. I do love Calyx OS. I've enjoyed the organization so far. But yeah, I was surprised to see they didn't accept Monero at the moment, but they're definitely interested and should be adding it soon, hopefully. I know they're in the process of that.
when somebody tells me that, oh, you can accept Bitcoin, just set up this BTC Pay server, I just want to bash them on the head. It's just not even remotely the same user experience.
I was just about to add, it's I was wondering when this is going to happen because it protects the privacy of the receiver so much better with Monero. It's just built in. And I was kind of wondering when these donations would switch over, because if you use BTC, you know exactly when and how much these projects receive. So it's not really it. It's kind of hard to imagine, like, why would you want to put a podcast or run a project where everyone just knows how much money you're receiving every month from random people? I guess you do that with Patreon a little bit, but it's still kind of weird with Bitcoin. So
But that's still
yeah, it's
private
kinda,
between you, the person donating to you, and Patreon. I think that's the key difference too. If you're using
right.
Bitcoin, it can be easily spied on by anybody. And we saw this.
Correct.
There's been two
Right,
big
right.
cases of this recently. One was kind of Foss advocate. People seem to be very torn on how they like him or not, and he has some weird stuff in his past. But regardless of who he is, Luke Smith is a guy who was basically tagged and then attacked by the media because he received a Bitcoin donation from a wallet that they already knew who owned it. And he didn't choose to accept it. He was just sent some Bitcoin from somebody who has been kind of labeled as somebody they don't like, and so he got this whole smear campaign against him. And then the other big one was there's a big darknet researcher called dark.fail. They have a lot of resources and really good Twitter account to follow. And they were accepting Bitcoin donations. They've been pushing Monero for a while, but they were accepting Bitcoin donations. And then they had two people who donated to them. I guess were flagged, and so their exchange accounts got shut down because they were being donated to via BTC. And again, with Bitcoin, you can't say, "Oh, I actually don't want your donation." Like you can't deny it. So you get it, and the person can just get your account shut down.
There's an update on the dark.fail dude. He, I believe, just got hit for money laundering charges.
I always mix up dark.fail and deep.web. Are they the same thing?
No, dark.fail.
Hell no.
Dark.fail was receiving, at least according to the court documents, was receiving kickbacks from the DNMs for giving the advertisements on his site, and received very large amounts of money from known dark market wallets, like the.
I thought that was deep. Sorry, yeah, deep. Whatever the other one, not the dark.fail.
Yeah, I don't.
That's not really money laundering though. That's like, because that's kind of like paid promotion.
Was it dark.fail?
They probably didn't pay any tax on it is the issue.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, because it's like an Instagram follower.
Oh no, that was
being paid to
deep.web.
promote stuff.
Yeah, not dark.fail. Dark.fail
okay.
is he's a researcher. He's not involved in any of that kind of stuff, as far as I know.
That was,
yeah, sorry, Scott, we can't hear you. Deep.web is the right one, yeah.
Yeah, dark.fail. But yeah, so they had exchange accounts shut down because they were donated tainted BTC. Or sorry, the people donating had accounts shut down because they donated to dark.fail. He was just a researcher. He does not run darknet marketplaces. He has no affiliations there. He researches and puts out research on darknet marketplaces. So he also has gone to only accepting Monero donations. And he has a very popular tweet that says use Monero or go to jail. Was a big one that he put out a while ago. But he's seen the trend, and so many people are coming around to see accepting Bitcoin for donations just puts you and your donors at risk, especially if you have any kind of, I don't know, any kind of adversary. Really, it's not even just, it's definitely not just legal. It can be just people who don't like you or don't like what you do, that kind of thing. So
I'm going to try to buy that tweet as an NFT. Use Monero or go to jail.
Well,
I'm going to buy the
cool
fluffy voting accident one. No, you can go BT. Yeah, I just made a stupid joke.
No, I was just saying it's good to see, because I've been wondering about this for a while, and I hadn't been tracking this Seth, but I had been seeing a number of. It seemed like this was occurring, but I hadn't been actually investigating these projects. But it just seemed like when are people going to catch up to this? Because, like you were saying, Justin, like, oh, just run BTC Pay server, and then you got to set up all this other, and it's like you have to, and it has to be running 24/7, or you don't get paid. And it's like, oh, that's a great system.
Yeah, it adds so much complexity. I mean, that works. And you could even, if you wanted to accept Monero donations through a BTC Pay server, you can do that too. But it's, for most people in most use cases, it's needless overhead and needless complexity when you could just have a static sub address. And if you're worried about attacks through that, there are things you can do like churning amounts that you're unsure of, or things that seem like attacks, or if you're going to use it in certain ways. There are some advanced threat model things that you can do to try to mitigate the few potential attack angles there. But even those angles are generally just probabilistic and very hard to accomplish. And they're definitely not like Bitcoin, where you can just view how much you've been receiving or who's been sending to you, that kind of thing. So it has been really cool to see that trend. I'm going to try to keep harping on that. And I hope the Monero community will, because I think within Monero, we're not just Monero people. Like, we're not here just for digital cash. A lot of us are very privacy focused, and Monero is a tool in our toolkit. So I hope that people will see that using that tool to support other strong FOSS and privacy projects is just a great marriage of ideals, and is a great way to use the different tools.
We actually have quite a few outreach opportunities there. Like, I was speaking with Henry from Techlore, what, a day or 2 days ago, I think. And he was talking about how he had never been to DEF CON, for example. And like, I mean, come on, this guy runs like a privacy channel, right? You should probably go to DEF CON, right? And it'd be great for, if we do have an in-person DEF CON, which I know is still all over the place. We don't really know, but I think those are the sorts of people we should be targeting to speak, for example, at the Monero Village, because like, they're elevating Monero. That they seem to know that Monero is kind of what's down, right? With their VPN reviews, for example, they have a privacy section, and there's the pull request right now to say, in order to get full points for buying for a VPN for its privacy section, they must accept payment in at least one of these options, Monero, or gift cards, or one other not Bitcoin thing, right? Or cash, I think. So people seem to know it's the right thing to do, and we have similar messages that we're trying to just advance privacy. So to whatever, it's been good to see all the communities sort of like be accepting of Monero now. It's sort of like the thing you do now. It's great.
Yeah, we're definitely gaining more clout than we had before. Previously, you'd mentioned Monero, and it would either be, why would I care about privacy, or what the heck is Monero, and it's a scam.
Now
Or just
everyone
you're a
asks.
super shady drug dealer or something.
Yeah.
See, now I can be a super shady drug dealer and use Monero without it being weird.
In reality, I do love seeing like these clear ways that have nothing to do with darknet markets or any kind of shady activity, in ways that we're seeing people use Monero day to day. I mean, we're obviously seeing it in lots of other merchant acceptance, coin guards, places like that, but having these, just using it for donations is a really cool way to show its power, and to show like, hey, I'm a normal person
And the more
who's not
people
doing
that
anything
are-
bad and
yeah.
wants to donate to an organization that's just helping improve people's privacy. Like, there's nothing shady about that. I just want to do it in a way that I couldn't be implicated for something later on, or if there's a privacy crackdown and they decide to go after all of these nonprofits and FOSS orgs, I'm not linked to that in the future, or that kind of thing. It's really cool.
Were you saying something, Need Money 90?
Yeah. So it's kind of a snowball effect. When you have more legitimate vendors that are accepting Monero, it lets other legitimate vendors look at that and say, aha, maybe I could accept Monero. And at some point, it'll just become standard if you actually want a privacy thing, because, like, well, these places are accepting it. What's the problem? So it's nice to see places actually gaining acceptance, especially for privacy-oriented things.
Yeah, and it's that acceptance network effect snowball. I mean, like you mentioned, the more people accept it, the more normalized it becomes, and the more tools to integrate it into shopping platforms and e-commerce platforms. And again, it's just that network effect snowball that hopefully will continue and continue and continue.
Very cool stuff. We'll probably go at least a little bit over if that's okay with everybody else here. But are there any other news that people or comments people wanted to get out right away?
Actually, I will be back. Give me 1 minute.
All right.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, this so I think it sort of dovetails what we just. I haven't taken the time to listen to the Richard Stallman interview, and there seemed to be disagreements on what he was saying. But I know he is like an extreme privacy expert, so I'm kind of curious if anybody listened to that and what Stallman had to say about Monero, because to him Monero may not even go far enough, because I know he's like, if it's not guaranteed to be private, he's just not about it.
Before we answer that, I just want to quickly say, bye, Tallest Man. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you. But I did not see this interview, no.
Nope.
Well, you, the audience watching, hopefully one of you saw the interview. On the Monero Talk YouTube, there's an interview with Richard Stallman.
Well, I saw it, and one thing that surprised me a bit was that he seems to have a very strong opinion that privacy protections ought not to apply to those who he thinks are wealthy.
Really?
So,
Oh,
yeah.
right. Yeah,
So which is a bit problematic just from both technological grounds, and also the definition of wealthy is going to obviously be highly dependent on which society you belong to, and who gets to define that word, and how are you going to get a piece of software to automatically treat two classes of people differently.
So is he of the opinion that, Monero's like, maybe Monero is not the best example, but like if someone was using a financial privacy tool, is he saying that the tool should like have a back door for wealthy individuals, or just wealthy individuals need to like otherwise disclose what they're doing?
You should hear it for yourself, but I mean,
Okay.
the conclusion from how he thinks monetary systems ought to work would lead to, that would be one way that would satisfy him, I would think, would be a backdoor, just like you mentioned. But he never said the word. And because he was not all that conversant on the details of cryptocurrencies in general, including Bitcoin and Monero, it was a bit of a disjoint conversation. But yeah, that was a bit surprising, I would say, to somebody who was expecting like an across the board endorsement of privacy.
We have some interesting comments coming in. I'm just going to read them quickly. One's from someone whose name is Ed Oneclear. He says, Doug mentioned Stallman did not support privacy in Monero as much as he expected. And then another individual, Kelly Davis, says Stallman claimed to not understand Monero, so he could not answer any of Doug Truman's questions. When Doug caught him up, Stallman would interrupt to give non-answers. So that's their take on the interview too, which clearly I need to see.
Yeah, it kind of what Dr. Kim is saying, actually, because I've seen him give a talk before, and I only like shook his hand briefly, so it wasn't really much of anything. But it doesn't surprise me, because I think in his mind you can use software and technology to sort of engineer the outcome you want, which isn't always possible. And I think that's his mindset. Like, there's got to be a way that we can use technology to engineer the outcome that I want, and it's not. As you can probably tell, it doesn't really work that way. Or, I mean, it's really common, because I've seen other people say this. I've seen comments about Monero where people have asked, with the mining algorithm, how do we get it so that the mining algorithm gets, because people with more resources still have a better probability of mining stuff. How do we fix that? And Howard and I were kind of like, well, that's just so far beyond our scope. It doesn't even, maybe it's possible, but it's so far beyond our comprehension at this point. Like, we can't even solve that, right? So it's kind of that mindset where it's not necessarily malicious. It's just that there's like a frustration, I think, on his part of why things don't work a certain way. Maybe, I don't know. It's interesting that he actually wouldn't say backdoor, but there's no other way to describe what Dr. Kim was saying. I mean, you can't just not have privacy for rich people somehow magically without a backdoor. Like, I don't know. It's super weird.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that type of thing in a software tool is just not really possible, as far as I understand, unless you use some kind of third-party oracle to give that info. And I mean, no matter what the ethics of deciding who can and cannot access privacy are, the actual technical ways to implement that are either impossible or require some
Correct.
severe trust in a third party to do the discrimination for you. I don't know how else to word that.
I want
Well,
the IRS
the
to tell.
exchange
I want the
value.
IRS to tell me if I can have privacy or not.
Yeah, yeah, they give you your key to
Well,
allow you.
So I think what Seth is commenting on for people listening is that the exchange value changes constantly. So how would you even? That's what he's referring to the Oracle. Like, how do you even like? Because you could say, well, if you can buy a Ferrari or something, then we got to unveil. But when the exchange rate is all over the place, you can't really do that without a third party telling you. But then that'll. I mean, it's just you kind of just go
And
in
you'd
circles.
have to tie identity to the blockchain, which is
Right.
already.
Well,
I mean, that's already a
right.
nightmare just starting there, much less adding any kind of on-chain discrimination, which is, whew, I don't even want to get into that. But I haven't listened to the interview, so I don't want to assume too much about what was said. But I'm getting fired up just thinking about the things being proposed.
Man, he's a super weird guy. I can't ever figure him out.
He certainly seemed to make a clear distinction in his mind between between money and speech. He seems to think that that different rules can be applied to those two worlds, and he kind of rejected the idea that money should be regarded as a form of speech. So he thinks it should be basically restricted to those sort of redistributive means, as I was saying before.
On a really high meta level, I actually do think we're going to kind of revisit those conversations over the next 5 to 10 years, at least in the US. I think those lines will be kind of tested in both directions. So we'll have to see how it goes. To varying effect, like not to someone who says money doesn't have the same exact protections as speech might not want like a backdoor in a system, perhaps. But like, I don't want you to treat these as like two totally opposing things. But I think that the lines of protections for money are going to be tested because you have different groups all over the world that are pushing for certain anti-money laundering things, and then you have on the other side people that are pushing for basic privacy level protection things, and it's just going to go back and forth for a while, I think. But they can't get rid of Monero. Monero's here, and so they're going to have to include that in their frameworks. So.
Wait, but Monero Space announced that the Monero network was shutting down.
I forgot we did that. Yeah.
Everybody needs to turn off all their miners, and like we need to end the network. Just stop it.
Yeah, we announced that on April 1st, which might have been a hint that due to increasing pressure from chain analysis companies who would like to collect data and profit off the sale of it for potentially discriminatory purposes, that the Monero Space unilaterally announces that we're shutting down the Monero network because we obviously have the power to do that.
Just turn off your nodes.
Yeah, so we are hereby begging people to turn off their nodes. Thank you very much for your compliance. But yeah, definitely we'll need to watch that interview. It's good that Monero Talk had him on. Certainly one I should watch. So everyone here that's watching the Monero Meet, go watch that afterwards. You have a long weekend probably, so make it happen. I want to quickly talk about Monero Space. Sorry, not Monero. Sorry, the Monero-versary, which is coming up really, really soon. We have a party planned, and then we had a few comments about Triptych and the stuff. I don't know if I want to get into the updates with everything that's been going on there. Sort of because I don't actually know exactly what's going to happen yet. Still don't have a specific update, but actually, sorry. On that note, VT Nerd, are you aware with specifically what Monero Moo has done with Triptych yet, or because I haven't followed closely what he's doing versus what Sarang still needs to do, or whatever like that?
So Sarang sort of wrote like I guess you saw the crypto glue code, meaning he took sort of the existing crypto library and wrote the code on top of that to sort of do all the machinations, all the computations. And then Moo his role in this was, well, how do you slam this into Monero? If I recall, the issue is figuring the key image thing is going to change. So that's not a good thing. or it's not a simple thing. I think what I would say. So I think a lot of people hear triptych and it's like, oh yeah, Monero, we just added, it's going to be a little bit more complicated than ring CT is what I'm getting at, because ring CT, the base, um when confidential transaction was added, the base ring signature system didn't really change much. It was just how the amounts were sort of computated and tracked. This is a little bit more involved because basically the entire thing has changed. And so the key image is important for double spending. So you don't want to get that wrong, basically. So Moo had indicated that he's got, or she, I don't really know Moo at all, that they have it's somehow integrated, but that it wasn't quite ready. I mean, so what we're getting at here is a year would be like a really, really tough push, because it would have to get in there somehow, iron out some details, and then probably audit it. And auditing this would be, again, this would be beyond, in my opinion, probably bulletproofs or something like that. Because again, it's like see, what's weird about this is it's not really replacing the bulletproof side and the range proof side. It's replacing the actual ring signature portion. So it's like the oldest working portion of the code. And the real issue is that we've already got tons of legacy code to handle prior transactions, meaning every wallet has to support older transaction styles because people still have funds pre-ring CT probably. So those wallets have to support it, or I mean, they don't technically don't have to. You could write a new wallet, but the one that ships with Monero has to support every transaction style. So then this puts a little bit additional maintenance burden every time we do a change. It's not necessarily a good thing from a maintenance perspective. And you should probably guessed, all these downstream wallet providers, they then immediately come to the chat room and say, "What have you guys done?" I'm sure XMR Scott and Seth could talk about that quite a bit, because even if you're using the built-in tools, it gets kind of complicated because things will change a bit. So I mean, the answer is, I I mean, to be excited. I mean, it looks like it probably can fit in there, but I wouldn't expect this. Definitely not in 6 months, and a year is probably pushing it, just because based on the timeline. Yeah, I don't know. It's really going to depend on. There's an unknown issue with the key image. I mean, it's solvable. It's just that Moo and Sarang probably have to work out the details, or I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really have to be the two of them, but it has to be someone. So
Got it.
positive,
Thank you.
negative on it. It looks like it will move forward, but um, yeah, and it's gonna be interesting, because like I'm not sure if we've done. I think discussed it with you. It'll be interesting to see the profiles and the disk access, because once you increase the ring members, the disk has to grab the code has to grab a public key for each one of those, because to save on space, we don't actually, in the ring signature, we only send an integer. We don't actually send the public key of every ring member, because it's basically 1 byte versus 32 bytes kind of thing. So then you end up hitting the disk a lot. So you have 128. I think I discussed this a couple of Monero meets ago. If you have 128 ring members, you end up accessing the disk 128 times, effectively um, per transaction per input. However, we use LMDB, and it's pretty much designed specifically for this use case. And the modern operating systems have plenty of available memory for caching. So, and it'll, like, we pretty much have everything we need to make this as quick as possible. It's just that, like, what do the numbers actually look like? Because when we switch to it, um, it may be the point where we're kind of knocking on the door into Ethereum a little bit, where we're saying like spinning disks are really pushing it at this point, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because those are aging out anyway. But it's something to consider, that there's more angles than just, can this fit in there. So that's why I'm saying like a year is it could be tough, but plausible. I don't know. I mean, 1.5 years would be more. I hate to say that, but that's kind of more plausible. But that's just me guessing from how this historically works. I mean, it could be, we could find a problem. It could be 3 years. Or it could be doing a year. I don't know. But my guess would be like 18 months probably.
Got it. So if that's the case, I'm assuming Bulletproof Plus will be its own fork before then. Get that gain in, maybe bump the ring size, and then Triptych later.
Correct. Yeah, I agree, because it shrinks it, and there's also the angle. I mean, we have to face reality that maybe they get at a certain point and they realize that the key image thing is just a non-starter, and Sarang has to go back. I mean, I'd have to look at the details again. That seemed unlikely when I looked at it, but again, until you actually have it fully working and audited, you kind of have an unknown. So, whereas Bulletproof Plus is pretty much a known thing, right? I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah, the code there has been audited twice, and it works. So
there you go. See? Well, the audit was much simpler too, because it was a tweak of an existing thing we've already had, so it wasn't like a complete redo.
yeah, and just for everyone in the chat, that was audited twice, once by Zengo, and then another time by JP Amison. So very cool stuff. Are there any other last things? Otherwise, I just want to give a plug for the Monero-versary, which is happening on April 18th. Last chance for people to give any other news or updates or anything.
Nothing on my end.
Nothing on Doug's end. Scott, do you want to try your audio real quick? We can try this.
Yes, we can.
Oh,
I
Welcome
can't
back.
hear you, but I see the green dot. So that
yeah,
must-
he's talking. It was.
You're live.
There's Rotten.
Yes.
well, thanks for being here, Scott. So, sadly, I can't hear you, but also I can see that you're talking. So hopefully people on YouTube can, and clearly others can. So this is just...
Well, maybe Scott can answer my question. How fun will it be to add new features into like Triptych and all that into the wallet that's constantly a moving target?
Crickets. Bip,
Oh,
bip,
did he?
bip.
Oh no!
I
And
refreshed.
down.
Rip.
So much for that.
Yeah, I don't.
I was
care.
curious because I know I've talked to wallet people about this before, and it's frustrating. So our goal is to make it not frustrating, but it's when you have this much crypto involved, it gets like, yeah, it's not like adding a Bitcoin wallet, which is already enough.
All right, I'm going to give a quick plug for the Monero-versary next weekend. Then, sorry, not next weekend. Sorry, April 18th, which is
In a
not...
couple of weekends, right?
It's a couple of weekends, so it's 2 weeks and a day from today. So Monero's turning 7. Woohoo!
Yay.
Monero's turning 7. Birthday, anniversary, whatever we want to call it. We're going to have a fun set of events, games, a few talks. No one's confirmed yet, but we obviously have the door open for people who want to get involved. I'm thinking about a lot of fun stuff. Like, instead of just bringing, let's say, the Atomic Swaps teams together and just having them talk about tech all the time, I think it'd be cool to chuck them all and like maybe pit them against each other in different teams for a game or something. And-
She lost your favorite influencer, please.
Yes, get your favorite influencer to show up. We'll make sure to invite all the cool kids.
We should have a Cake versus Moneruyo showdown.
Cake versus Moneruyo would be great.
Bam.
I wish we
What
could do
about-
this in
yeah,
person.
what
Can you
about
imagine if we had like
Federball? I
a
gotta
real
bring-
in-person like dodgeball thing where people are like it starts off nice and fun, and then all of a sudden you realize that certain people are in it to win it, and then it becomes a bit more exciting. If you have comments about what you want to see in the Monero-versary,
That means
let us
you-
know. But
You got to buy a Barolo now, right? You got to make sure that the stores don't run out. You got to get it like immediately.
it's going to be like the like you have inclement weather coming, everyone runs to the
Around here,
store to get-
Barolo goes quick. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. You go there and like, oh my God, all the Barolo's gone. What happened?
I wish Monero was large enough that every April 18th, the stores were just out of Barolo. I'm sure that that region of Italy would be very, very pleased at at that campaign every year.
Should stock up on 04 Barolos just in case.
Yes, you know, it's
And
going to
probably
do better
very
than your
confused, as
Monero
they already are.
investment.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, so I've got to get 2004 I got to get a specific year.
Yes, the meme was specifically a 2004 Barolo. Though people substitute with a Barolo because you know
Man,
the
this is
04
like, oh man, I've been
Barolos
doing it wrong for like 3 years now.
it's a little expensive to do it right. Like
How much
it's
is an 04 Barolo right now?
a couple hundred.
Well,
if
I'm
you could
sorry,
find
you
it.
know. Oh man, I don't know because like a 3 or 4, a decent one was already like 50, 70 bucks, I think, something like that. I mean, it depends on how. Ugh. I need money. I've been doing it wrong for years now. You set me straight. I feel like I've let the community down.
Yes,
You
supposedly,
shit.
according to IJ, who was the person who was drinking the Barolo in the first place and spawned the meme, 2004 was a particularly good year for Barolos. And so they like that year is a particularly nice vintage, which is why 2004 generally is an expensive one. It wasn't a bad year.
It'd be really funny if it was just like a shit year for some reason. And like, still a meme anyway.
The more you know.
I'll be lucky to be drinking 2014 Barolos just for any relevance. But yeah, Moneroversary, do be there. It'll be great.
Yeah, I don't
fun
even. You probably have to
games.
order that online because I don't think.
Yeah, you won't get that unless you're ordering it online.
It just won't pick that up at your nearest Benny's, I assume.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think I could get past like probably like 2012 or something in here.
All right. Anything else before I wrap this up here?
Nope, that's it for me. I gotta head off and do some stuff, so good timing.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for being here. Of course, Dr. Daniel Kim, Seth, VT Nerd, Rotten Wheel, Scott. Sorry I couldn't hear you half the time, Scott. Tallest Man. It's great that we had this. This is a really lively, really good Monero Meet, in my opinion. Good, strong start for the Moneroversary coming up again in 2 weeks and a day. That'll be a similarly informal, but also meant to be a fun celebration. We are celebrating an anniversary after all. So, you know, celebrating the 7 years of blood, sweat, and tears that people have put into Monero to get it where it is today, and everyone that's gotten involved. If you have a name of an individual that you think would be interested in participating, please ask them. Please send them our way in the Monero Space chat, Monero Events chat. We would love to have people from around the ecosystem that are just happy to celebrate Monero's birthday too. It's not just us, right? The Monero community is a huge group of people. So really looking forward to that. I think it'll be a really, really fun time. Again, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again at the Moneroversary.
Thanks for hosting.
Bye, everybody.
When I say bye.
Bye, everyone.